Welcome back to another episode of TV Inquiry with your host, Miguel. Very, very thankful for you guys tuning in this week. I'm really excited to talk about the two shows that I am going to showcase today. I feel like one of the shows that I'll be talking about, you guys may have known. However, I feel like it's not a very common TV show in the US. I feel like it's more of a British television series that is more has more history and culture within its community and its country as opposed to being in the States. However, there's very big influence behind the show that I'll be talking about. For those who are new to the show, hi, welcome in. Thank you so much for checking me out. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, like, and share the YouTube channel that is here, Our Real Addiction. I'm really, really glad that you guys got to the video portion of things. And if you haven't yet or want to just check us out on the go, we are available on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts as well. And if you haven't yet, follow at Instagram at Our Real Addiction, as well as our Twitter at Our Real Pod, where we will keep you updated on all things movies, news, and pop cinema. So thank you. But getting back to the show, today's episode I will be talking about Doctor Who. Now, I'm really excited to talk about Doctor Who because it's one of my favorite television shows ever. It is a television show that had a revival back in 2005 and has been going since 2005. And obviously, it's 2023, a decade long show plus, 18 years so far of television, but even more so. Doctor Who has been around since the 60s, for those who haven't known. This television show is about a Time Lord alien, an alien classified as a Time Lord who travels in a box called the TARDIS, which stands for Time and Relative Dimensions in Space. And it's a box that can time travel as well as physically travel anywhere in all of space and time. And that is basically the consensus of the show. Each season has an overall arc and theme. But what I really love about this show, especially from its revival from the very beginning, back in 2005, when Russell T Davies was actually helming the showrunner, was the showrunner at the time. He introduced Doctor Who to a new worldwide audience, which captivated me. In the beginning, this show was beloved by British television audiences because it is a BBC show. It has been going around since then and has been continuously redeveloped as well. But what makes it fresh, though, about this show is that the series keeps going and continuously changing their actors as well as their story. Sometimes it can be a lot. It can be sometimes a little hard to keep up. But there has been since 2005, and I'll only be talking about the revival of 2005. Classic Who will be another episode. For those who want to do a little follow up on that and want more explanation on it. But basically, the consensus of the show is the Doctor. The Doctor is a Time Lord traveling alien who visits Earth from time to time, collects a couple people named the Companions, and usually a story season arc either reflects on the Doctors or on the Doctor or on the Companion. Since the 2005 show revival, there have been Eccleston. There has been Christopher Eccleston, who plays the Ninth Doctor. There's been David Tennant, who's the most memorable Doctor, even though Eccleston is fantastic, who helmed Doctor for about 56 episodes and counting. We also have Matt Smith, as well as Peter Capaldi, and recently the former Jodie Whittaker, who played the 13th Doctor in the latest seasons of Doctor Who. What I really love about the show, and the reason why I'm choosing to share it is because not a lot of people talk about science fiction shows as much. Sometimes they work. Science fiction in television has always been a hit and miss. They can be really good shows, example Star Trek, or there could also be shows that have only a season or two that are good and then fall off. One of the science fiction shows that I would also recommend for those as a sneak peek would be Fringe back in the early 2000s, like Y2K, with J.J. Abrams was the executive producer on that. That has to do a lot with like time continuum. And honestly, when it comes to Doctor Who, there are a lot of things that are relatively science accurate, which is always kind of funny. But we've had memorable moments with the show. And actually, a lot of stars that you may have known from the British television shows that have transcribed to film have made cameos on the show. Now, I'm just trying my best to cover up the consensus of what the show is, but what I'm trying to get to is the phenomenon about it. Doctor Who has been around for so long that sometimes people are afraid of it continuing kind of hitting stale, but it never has been. Just recently, the former Jodie Whittaker, she has was the first ever female doctor to hold the role after years and years, decades of this role only being predominantly male. Um, Everybody has their own favorite doctor. And the reason why I'm talking about these doctors, so when I said Ninth Doctor, technically that's when the revival became in. So the first season of the new series started in 2005. The first episode is called Rose and introduces Billie Piper as the companion of the Ninth Doctor, Christopher Eccleston, and the show just skyrockets. The first season is absolutely crazy. There's so many memorable shows, from a little bit of Big Brother in there, some episodes like holding Big Brother. There's elements of like the future wars that could come to see kind of light in reality, but there's also have been many memorable moments that have made people cry, myself, that have and really pushed the boundaries about some topics that are really kind of overlooked. But what I love about the show the most is that this show captivates really dark and interesting themes about real life and human interactions, and pushes the boundaries on that by also exploring this magical world that is the universe and the galaxy, while also giving such a good narrative sometimes. Since Russell T Davies, the former showrunner was Stephen Moffat. Stephen Moffat took over after Russell T Davies finished his series with season 4. Moffat joined the Doctor Who crew starting with season 5 all the way to season 11. Yes. And in so doing so, he did Matt Smith 11th Doctor, and then he also did Peter Capaldi, which is the 12th Doctor, following with Jodie Whittaker. But what Jodie Whittaker, when she started her show, which was about 4 or 5 years ago now, she had Chris Chibnall as the showrunner for her. People fell off during her seasons, but also at the same time it gained new audiences because it was the first time when it pushed the boundary of it being just a male doctor and now it being a female doctor. And for some people, misogynist for some reason, didn't like that, didn't really appreciate, didn't see the role of her. But I personally liked her, and I actually rewatched her series, and I really, really did like it. In the beginning, I wasn't really loving it as much, but it grew on me. And now that the new season, which is coming out in, what is it? I think it's coming up on November of this year, which is going to be debuting the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who with returning actors such as David Tennant and Donna Noble's character, who is, oh, please don't, Catherine Tate, a comedian really well known from the British television series, who's coming back as reprising her role, and it's kickstarting the new series with the first ever Black Doctor played by Ncuti Gatwa, and I'm so excited for him because it is such a big role and a life-changing experience for actors to hold the title of the Doctor, or formerly known as Doctor Who. There's several episodes that I want to recommend to you guys. There was one specifically that I really loved during Stephen Moffat's era, which was Matt Smith, 11th Doctor. One is called, it's based on an episode that has Amy and the Doctor, which Amy, who is, fun fact, Karen Gillan. That's the first time I saw Karen Gillan on screen. She was a former companion of the Doctor back in 2011-12, and she was magnificent. And then she joined Guardians of the Galaxy shortly after that, so very happy for her. basically she has a very soft spot for Doctor Who because it basically kickstarted her career into stardom, and now we know her as Nebula in Guardians of the Galaxy, and we can't wait to see her again in other roles as well because she's proven herself to be a leading lady. She's proven herself to have the range, and this is where I really have to give Doctor Who and its actors their flowers because everybody on that show, from the main doctor, from villains, from companions, from cameos, everybody delivers on a stage, on a level that is so high and very impressive because their entire show is in a sense kind of silly thinking about it because it's time travel and aliens, and there's they're reacting to things that aren't there. There's one episode where there's dinosaurs in space. There's another episode where there's some classic villains, for example, like the Weeping Angels, which are literally statues and they go like this, and every time you blink they move, and every time they try to get close to you they send you back in time, and during that time disturbance they gain their power to continue and manipulate and destroy worlds. One of the episodes that I wanted to talk about, other the fact that the Matt Smith character, was during season 3, during Matt David Tennant's era, with Freema Amen as his companion, who played Martha Jones. There's an episode called Blink, which is one of my favorite episodes ever. Before Stephen Moffat took the helm of showrunner, the episode's is written by him, and he did a phenomenal job in bringing horror, suspense, thriller aspects into a science fiction world that really, really was really ahead of its time for it, and I really loved it. It had so much character. It had so much character development for not even the leads, mind you. It focused on a different character while the leads were sidelined in a sense, but it made sense where it kind of looped all the way around. And it's one of the best episodes I've ever seen from Doctor Who. Really well written, and introduces one of the most frightening villains that the Doctor has faced. From then, talking villains, there have been Cybermen, the Daleks, there have been the Weeping Angels, there have been the Targaryens, there has been Silurian warriors, there has been so many different types of aliens out there, and it's just an entire world that I definitely would recommend you guys to check out. If you haven't yet, I would recommend you starting obviously with the first season. It's very goofy in the beginning. You can tell that it's filmed in 2005. You can tell that it's developing as it goes. But trust me when I say this, that it's one of the best shows out there for you to check out, especially within the United States of America, because a lot of people don't have that big fan base. I have to kind of search for people to to have a conversation about Doctor Who, because not a lot of people know Doctor Who, and that's kind of like the sad part, because this show is fantastic and full of amazing characters that are really well fleshed out. Some seasons do have a lack. Sometimes there is a little bit of a doctor and companion romance, which kind of affects the narrative a little bit, but it always ends up working out, and it always ends up making memorable moments. I guarantee you, if you go on Watch Mojo, not to promote another channel, there have been several episodes of Doctor Who where have made people cry, have pushed the boundaries of fear, have really stabled themselves to be a show that has completely been amazing, and I really recommend it. It's on Max, HBO, and all the scenes are there up to Jodie Whittaker. And the best thing about this show is that it continuously changes. So it switches its lead, it switches its companions, it sometimes switches its villains. And I'm telling you right now, I know that might be a gripe, because sometimes you do get attached to these characters and these personalities, and you don't want to let them go. And I think that's the heartbreak of the show, because there's a fear in change, but there is so much to be done and developed there, and it makes the story new. And it probably is one of the reasons why this show is going to go on its 60th anniversary in November, because it continuously pushes boundaries and fleshes out characters and gives you stories that you will probably enjoy. And they can be goofy, they can be scary, they can be, having a lesson at the end of the episode, or they can be arcs. There's some episodes that have three episodes. There's some seasons that have 3 episodes to finish a storyline, and that's the good part about the show because it fleshes out completely what these characters should be. So if you haven't yet, please give Doctor Who a visit. I definitely recommend it. It's one of my favorite shows out there. And again, thank you so much because I really want you. I can't wait to talk about it with you guys, and I can't wait to tell you about the second show. The second show that I'll be talking about today, I feel like a couple people have been probably mentioning, but I haven't seen much hype on it on social media as much. It is actually more of a show that I've been hearing through friends that recommended me the show and actually just finished watching the first episode. And that show, it's Shrinking. Shrinking is written and directed by a couple people. Jason Segel is part of the writing credits next to Brett Goldstein, Bill Lawrence, Sophie Selig, Wally Bram, Rashana Furban, Brian Gallivan, Neil Goldman, Annie McBain, Bill Posse. And it has directors holding as James Pansold, Randall Keenan, Winston, Russo Young, Zach Raff. So, what is Shrinking about? First of all, let me lay them out the cast. Jason Segel plays Jimmy, Jessica Williams plays Gabby, Luke Taney is Sean, Michael Urie is Brian. We also have Harrison Ford as Paul. Its main antagonist. Its main protagonist is actually Jason Segel. And this show has been circulating my mind for so long because it is a show that I had a hard time watching in the beginning because it tackles technically aspects of humanity that is hard to process or have conversations about. Shrinking is a show about grief. And grief has been a regular subject matter of TV. If you have you been noticing in terms of like what really dramatizations of shows have been kind of more on the rise as opposed to being more like comedic aspects. This show is actually on Apple TV and it's produced by the same people that made Ted Lasso, which is another show I'd love to talk about sometime during the show. It has some elements in terms of like its beats. For example, grief isn't just the central hook of Shrinking. It's part of its like very fabric of the show. The narrative beats of the first episode mirror the wild emotional roller coaster its protagonist goes through, which are depression, anger, and elation that comes through from a breakthrough. And over again, it constantly pushes the boundaries of how to handle loss, how to handle disappointment, but overall, it also parallels with Gabby's character, who seems to be more put together, even though her mother did pass away within the first couple scenes of the episode. Sorry. But what I really like about the show, and what I really do enjoy about the show, is that some of the emotional choices that the show is trying to portray really dig deep within a human characteristic, right? So Shrinking, I liked, and it took me a while to watch. Same thing with The Bear, because it tackled a couple things and questions that I haven't yet experienced yet. I feel like sometimes there's disclaimers, and there's going to be disclaimers within the show where there's going to be some topics that are hard to talk about because some people have experienced grief and loss, but it's a show that highlights and highlights grief not as a negative thing, but more of a way of life and a process to overcome. It's a show that like pushes there's a quote on it that I really love, but it's like it's asked, but to Jason Segel, it's like, I'm sorry, I have to ask, is this you forever? Like, is this going to be the person you are, it follows Jimmy through how do I say it? He starts practicing a cognitive behavioral therapy where he is not a patient technically, but one of the therapists. So his mentor, Paul, who's played by Harrison Ford, he develops a compassion fatigue with him and effectively showcased a montage sequence of its sessions. So continuously kind of pushing that of like a relationship between your therapist and you, but instead of you being the patient, it's two mentors, right? So you're learning from this guy and you're in that seat and you're also kind of like, okay, how can I take everything that I've learned from you and apply it to my own life when I have to be a therapist for other people? You know, it's a show that really digs deep, but also has comedic beats as well. Sometimes I feel like the only comedic aspect of it, believe it or not, is Harrison Ford, which has is incredible. I feel like Harrison Ford is definitely on that rise of going into television after kind of not retiring completely, but going into that aspect. We see him in Paramount's television show 1928, I believe, or 1918. And that's another show where he does successfully well as a character. But it's a show that I recommend for people that like drama, obviously, but also like kind of having shows where they attest and find the tribulations in your own life and you can relate to and you can apply to as well, because it show that you're going through this journey with Jimmy, but you're also kind of learning as you go as well. And that's what I found really nice about this episode, because even though I'm still 9 away from finishing the season, it got me immediately. It starts off really funny. It starts off with Jimmy waking up because it's a 3 a.m. pool party across the neighbors, and it's not the first time it's happened. You know, it has elements of realism in there, and it continues on and becomes this front man for the show. Jason Segel is fantastic. I've only ever seen him in How I Met Your Mother, and even then, I think he was one of the highlights of the show. To see him in a more darker tone show is very interesting, because you obviously start seeing the range that this actor has, as well as also finding the components of what really makes him a good actor. And also, I think his best work is done when he has the proper material, because I feel like a lot of times some actors who are really great and have the range that other people need, or I mean, have the range that they have, are sometimes falling short because of the material, and they can only do so much with it. And I feel like this show, because of also him having the writing credits, he's done so much character research that he's become Jimmy, and we embark on this journey with him as we try to learn and how we try to focus on how to move on through grief and loss, and how to like overcome that, even though sometimes it does feel like it's never going to happen. And I think it's a show that you guys should definitely watch. There's so much talent here from the get-go. And if you haven't yet, please check it out, because it's one of those shows that's going to make you think a little more. As a beginner after watching the first episode, I'm definitely hooked. I know a lot of people sometimes, including myself, will start a show and kind of fall off within the first 2 or 3 episodes. This is a show that takes its time to really captivate you and hold you, and make you realize some things about life, and make you realize a couple things about aggravations and within your own heart, or even towards other people, and how you even channel and tackle grief. So that's something that, for example, like if you want to get into, watch, but don't miss out on the show. Keep talking about the show, because I really do want there to be a second season. I'm not entirely sure. Sometimes once I'll finish it, I'm pretty sure I'll probably think this is probably one of these shows that is going to be 1 season and 1 season only, and that's fine. However, I feel like there's so much potential with Jimmy as a character, and I could probably see it going for 3 seasons, possibly. The fact that it's also by the creators of Ted Lasso. Ted Lasso also has some elements of grief and you know, anxieties that the character played by David Sudeikis is Jason Sudeikis? Jason Sudeikis, yeah. Sorry. You know, he really channels through with the character of Ted, and there's some really, really good personifications of grief and anxiety there as well. For those who are more on the happy-go-lucky side, then please check out Doctor Who. I feel like you'd probably enjoy that, because even then, Doctor Who has all those elements as well. Shrinking is a show basically based on grief. It's a show that will take you in and will chew you out and spit you out towards the end of the season, I believe. But it'll leave you feeling better, if that makes sense. It's almost borderline masochist, but it's one of the shows that I would definitely recommend for you guys. And if you have checked out these shows, please let me know on the Instagram. Reach out to me. Let me know if you do like the show, if you don't like the show. Let me know what could have been better, what could have been worse, or nah, I mean not worse, not could have been worse, but things like that, because I do want to talk about it with somebody, and I'm waiting for Adam to jump on these shows. So here we go. Fingers crossed for that. As always, guys, thank you so much for checking me out on another episode of TV Inquiry. I hope you enjoy the shows that I recommend. Again, Doctor Who is on HBO Max, formerly known, or Max, formerly known as HBO. All the seasons are there, including the recent season. And Shrinking is available on Apple TV, anywhere you get your streaming. So please check it out. Let me know what you think. And again, thank you so much for checking me out on another episode of TV Inquiry. I really appreciate it. If you haven't yet, and I forget, if you haven't yet, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification button for we are dropping TV Inquiry every Thursday. We are dropping movie reviews every Friday, podcast reviews on Wednesday, and movie news Monday on Monday. So thank you so much again. And follow our Instagram as well at Our Real Addiction, and our Twitter at Our Real Pod. As always, I am your host, Miguel. Thank you so much, guys. Sic Parvis Magna.